You are listening to an audio broadcast of Tom Sant's Messages That Matter. Brought to you by the Sant Corporation. Now, here's Tom Sant.
Hi, this is Tom Sant with another Message That Matters. So who is the greatest salesperson you've ever known? For me, it was my dad. He was just unbelievable in action. In fact, the CEO of Nabisco, Lee Bickmore, the guy who actually had first hired my dad, said he was the greatest natural salesman he'd ever seen. However, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the greatest salesman of all time was not my dad. It was a guy named Joe Girard. Girard amassed an unbelievable record, and he was able to do it because he discovered the Law of 250. It was the Law of 250 that kept his pipeline full, and that's our topic this time. Joe Girard had an amazing career as a car salesman. All by himself, selling cars to individual buyers, Joe sold more cars per year than 95% of all the dealerships in North America. Yes, all by himself. Yes, one car at a time. And he did it for more than a dozen years in a row. In fact, by the time Joe retired, people actually had to call a couple of weeks in advance and make an appointment to come in to buy from him. They would patiently sit on chairs out in the waiting room just to have their turn to buy from Joe. Joe was so good, nobody came close to him when he was actively selling. He was the top salesman in the auto industry year after year after year. In fact, he consistently sold more than twice as many cars as whoever finished second, and nobody's come close since. So, how'd he do it? Well, as I mentioned, he discovered the Law of 250, and he used it to guarantee himself a steady stream of interested prospects. Joe Girard believed that everybody knew about 250 other people. If he could just get each person he did business with to recommend him to 250 others, he'd never run out of leads. Joe came up with his Law of 250 while he was attending a funeral one day. He noticed that every mourner received a nicely printed prayer card with a color photo of the deceased. Well, that was pretty unusual back then and pretty expensive. How could the funeral home afford to do it? How could the director avoid printing too many and then wasting them? So after the funeral, he asked the director, how do you do it? How do you know how many to print? And the funeral director told Joe that over the years he'd conducted funerals for all kinds of peoples, and in nearly every instance, around 250 signed the register. So he just printed up 250 cards. Bingo! Joe saw in a flash that every prospect, every lead, every person he met was not only a potential buyer, but was also a means of introducing and recommending him to an additional 250 other prospects. Well, why not leverage that fact? And the way he did it was very clever. He stayed in constant touch with every lead, every prospect, every customer he'd ever acquired. Mainly, he did it with greeting cards. Back when Joe was active, he sent out over 13,000 cards every month. You can imagine the postage bills he was running up. These cards were very simple. On the front of the card, it might have a greeting appropriate to the month. Happy New Year, Happy 4th of July, Happy Halloween. And on the inside, it simply said, I like you, and then Joe signed it. He mailed them in plain envelopes, always a different size or color, so that people wouldn't think they were junk mail and toss them out. On an average day, Joe was sending out more than 400 cards. That's right, a day. And he did that month after month, year after year. In fact, everybody Joe met got a card from him. Well, when it came time to buy a car, who do you think these people thought of first? Joe had achieved top-of-mind awareness and had established a very personal relationship with these people. After all, they'd been hearing from him once a month for years. And they didn't know he was sending out 400 cards a day. All they knew was they were getting one from him once a month. Okay, you're probably not selling cars, so is this even relevant for you? Well, I think it's extremely relevant. In today's high-tech world, people value high touch, that personal connection, that sense of rapport and interest that someone expresses in us more than they ever have before. The nurture marketing guru Jim Cecil did a study for Microsoft on what makes resellers of Microsoft products successful. He found that the most successful resellers had a program of consistent contact with all of their customers and prospects. Every few weeks, everybody got an email, a phone call, a note, a clipping, something that communicated the fact that the sender was interested in them. These were not commercials. They weren't flyers advertising a product. They were a personal message. And at first, these messages didn't have much impact. But over time, after a dozen or so contacts, sales tended to spike. Well, we actually have it a lot easier than Joe Girard did. We don't have to send out greeting cards every month. We have other options. You could send your prospects 7 or 8 emails in the course of a year, then find 1 or 2 clippings that might be of interest to a customer, and then 2 or 3 greeting cards if you want to do that. The point is to stay in contact, to maintain some rapport, to keep your customer aware of and thinking of you. Now remember, we're sending a personal message. Sending them a spec sheet or some kind of technical information on a new product doesn't count. Sending them a notice about the grand opening of your new location doesn't count. If the message is self-serving in any way, it doesn't count. It has to be focused on them. So, I don't think it matters whether your customers are buying cars or tax preparation services or million-dollar corporate consulting contracts. People like to do business with people they like. And if you pay attention to them on a regular basis, they're more likely to like you. Besides generating the world's best proposals, SantSuite can generate letters and emails that you can then modify to create your own marketing campaign. Take a look at www.santcorp.com. This has been Tom Sant with another Message That Matters. Thanks for joining me.
To learn more about the Sant Corporation and their award-winning sales effectiveness solutions, visit them online at santcorp.com. That's SANTCORP.com.